timer said, make sure you have extension cards.
It's like a whole production set in here now.
I took a picture of it and sent.
When did you know that you wanted to raise show pigs?
Well, we started raising pigs at a young age. It was actually Kent was the one that got all fired up about raising pigs. He was 6 and I was 8. I had other thoughts. Detective, lawyer, maybe farmer, but Kent was the one that really liked the pigs. And then once we started working at it, we kind of gathered a few. Grandpa had 4 more sows than would fit in his farrowing crates, and he was my step-granddad, Lee. And anyway, he gave us those 4 sows, but in his own classic manner, he gave us an opportunity. He wouldn't give us the whole thing. He said, when you get done farrowing the sows, you got to sell the sows in my name, but you guys can have the pigs. So that when in your drone shot, the old pull together shed down there by the hay bales, that's where we farrowed those 4 sows. That's one of the reasons that shed's still here.
It's still there,
Yeah. But as we progressed, Kent went to school at Iowa State, and he came home, was excited. We had about 80 sows by the time I was a senior in high school. Got a little bit carried away. But he learned how to collect a boar in AI. And so we started AIing somewhere there, probably in the late 70s probably. But by 1981, he'd taken a repo class, and we built a dummy. And I think the first boar I collected was a York boar from Brad Eady. And got him collected, got all the stuff. And then it was about, I'd got semen from IBS. And then swine genetics started going. And I called up there and I really hit it off with Russ Snyder. I mean, Russ was just so helpful. And he taught me a lot about a number of things, but he taught me a lot about collecting and working with a boar and what to do to get them collected. And so that kind of transpired early 80s. And then he kind of planted the seed in my mind. He said, I think, there's lots of show pigs sold in Oklahoma and Texas. And he said, I think, if you'd work at it and build the right kind of sow herd and stuff, he said, I think you could start a business selling some show pigs and a little bit of semen. So we started working on that. And in 1986, we won the Iowa State Fair the first time. That was kind of a funny story in itself, because I'd bought a Beeler Yogi boar in 1982 at the Ida Grove test station from Jim Schuler. And he was a stout, really loose flex. In fact, he was so different. I wasn't certain if he was good. I mean, it was just, he was so different. He was so loose, structured and immature. And anyway, paid $360 for him, bred a couple sows, and then ended up, Rod DeFries, a neighbor that lives about 10 miles north, his boy Dave was just starting 4-H. And he wanted a boar to breed some sows or gilts for Dave's 4-H pigs. So he wanted to buy a hamp boar for $400. Well, it's crazy. I mean, people don't realize, probably, unless you live through it. I mean, they talk about the Depression, but if you lived through the early 80s or a farmer, you learn the sense of what a dime was. And I sold that boar for $400 and felt good that I'd made $40. Well, I'd bred 2 or 3 sows to him before I sold him. And next year at the county fair, about everything that won was out of him. And Russ Snyder came down to go fishing, and one of his favorite boars they had at that time was a Beeler Yogi son that they called Frond. He's real fertile, made really, really good sows. And so we went up to DeFries's pond and went fishing. I called Rod and said, can I show Russ this boar? And he said, yeah, he's at the Baker place. There'll be a whopper there behind the shed. Just beat on the roof of the shed. He said, there's about 20 sows in there in that boar. And they'd had him at that time. I think they'd probably had him 9-10 months. It probably was early summer, and they'd got him in the fall the year prior. Well, anyway, he'd grown and matured quite a bit. And he went out of that shed and looked like a beast. And Russ looked at me, he goes, you had this boar and you sold him? I said, I made $40. And he goes, did I not teach you a damn thing? He goes, you need to get this boar back. So anyway, what was funny was I told Rod that I'd like to buy the boar back. Well, they were getting enough good pigs out of him, there was just no way. But the boar was one of those growthy, just big, rugged, massive boars. And by 1985, the pig probably weighed 700 pounds when he was a 3-year-old. And they couldn't breed sows to him natural anymore. I mean, he just was big. So I'd been in touch with him, and I got him bought, then brought him home and broke him to the dummy. I'd collect him off the dummy before I sold him. But he'd bred sows to him natural for 2.5 years. So anyway, I get the boar back, and I got him on the dummy, got him collected, got a decent collection. And I had an F1 York Duroc gilt. It was my favorite gilt. She came in heat. It was going to be perfect to breed for a state fair litter. And I went out there, I ran him in the collection room, and he got fractious, and I could not get him. And after working him about 45 minutes, I knew he was starting to fight the pin and wanting out, and I thought, this isn't good, So I opened up and I let him out. I went in and I called Russ, and I said, Russ, I don't know what to do. I said, this boar, I got him collected once since I got him back, but I said he wasn't comfortable in that room, and he was wanting it. Well, one thing, taking him in between those decks, the nursery decks, you've been down through there, it's only about that wide. Well, that boar was about that wide. And I just think going through there the second time, I think he just got claustrophobic about it, and he was uncomfortable by the time. But anyway, Russ said, I'll come down and we'll work with him this weekend. We'll get him. But he said, if you're going to win the state fair, or didn't say win. He said, if you're going to have state fair pigs, he said, you better practice the GP theory. I said, what's the GP theory? He said, get pigs. He said, you can't show pigs you don't get. And I'd gone after I couldn't get, we called the boar Herb. When I couldn't get him back right away, I went out to Steve Foss's herd at Nickerson, Nebraska. Steve was a good friend of Jim Schuler's, and they used a lot of the same genetics and stuff. And I think he just bought a boar he called him 747. He was a tank bred boar he got from Danny Lewis. And he was an impressive boar. But he had a herd boar that was a Beeler. I think Beeler on a Yogi. I think he was a double bred dam. And anyway, we called him Spam because he was just loose. He was just loose as a goose. And anyway, I brought him home, and Russ told me, he said, well, you got that other boar, don't you? When I couldn't get Herb collect, he said, you got that other boar, don't you? And I said, yeah, I got Spam out there. He goes, go collect him and breed that sow. Oh man, I felt like I was breeding a queen to some street rat. I mean, it was just, but anyway, what was crazy was out of that litter, we got this target-butted, black-headed, white-bodied barrow. And a girl that lived in Red Oak was a surgeon's daughter, and her older brother was my younger brother Kent's best friend. And she came out and worked with the pigs. She loved processing pigs. Kathy Scallop was her name. Well, anyway, she showed that pig. I think it was her first year she showed at the state fair. She might have shown pigs at the county fair maybe 1 year prior, but her first trip to the state fair, she won it. But what was crazy was I had never shown, I was 27 years old. We'd had pigs at open shows, like at our county open shows, and back then it was a kind of a traditional deal. The counties would have an open show, but you just paint number the pigs. You wouldn't drive them. And you just send them in. Well, we'd had pigs win those open shows, but I'd never put a stick on a purple ribbon pig. Through 4-H, I never showed a purple ribbon pig. So anyway, I had open show entries up there, and I'd planned on showing that pig in the open show. Well, he wins a 4-H, and there wasn't any requirement at that time that you couldn't show him. So I went ahead and showed him in the open show, and he turned right around and won the open show too. But that didn't make very many friends. But that's when we really that was when the fall of 86 was Don Haney, a good friend of mine that's high patrolman, good friend of Russ's. He bought the first pig to go south. He came and bought a pig off the nursery decks. I think it was a bred belted hog, to be honest with you. $85. First one ever sold, $85.